I think we are so close to the bottom here, especially for Ethereum. I mean, the bottom could be happening this week or within the next 4 days. And from there, we are going to have, I think, a V-shaped recovery because of the liquidity that's coming as the shutdown has ended, the U.S. government shutdown, and also because the central bank, I think, is tilting dovish, especially with a potentially new Fed chair. That I think should propel prices very strongly into the end of January. And that's where I think Ethereum, could be 7,000 to 9,000. And I believe Bitcoin is going to recover to past its all-time high by that time.
Bitcoin is entering a transformative phase as institutional adoption and monetary tailwinds set the stage for a potential record-breaking rally in 2026. Tom Lee, co-founder of Fundstrat Global Advisors, presents a bullish outlook for Bitcoin as the market moves into 2026. He points out that 3 years of tight monetary policy have constrained liquidity, but with the potential easing under a new Federal Reserve chair, fresh monetary support is likely to flow into financial markets. This shift could act as a significant tailwind for risk assets, including Bitcoin. The prolonged muted business cycle, highlighted by the ISM Manufacturing Index staying below 50 for 36 months, the longest stretch on record, has suppressed business confidence. However, these headwinds are expected to dissipate next year, creating an environment favorable for renewed market momentum. Despite recent declines in the cryptocurrency market and concerns about a potential 4-year downturn, Tom Lee emphasizes that price alone is not a reliable signal of underlying strength. Bitcoin's evolution into an institutional-grade asset marks a key structural shift, with new market participants entering and regulatory clarity emerging. This transformation sets the current cycle apart from previous years and establishes conditions for long-term growth. Tom Lee signals that Bitcoin could surpass its previous all-time high by the end of January, driven by increased liquidity and concentrated market sentiment. Ethereum may experience a short-term dip toward $2,500 before a strong V-shaped recovery propels it to $7,000 to $9,000. With institutional adoption accelerating, both Bitcoin and Ethereum are positioned for notable upside, reflecting a market poised for a significant rally in the months ahead. This is just one chapter in Bitcoin's changing story. Add your views in the comments, share the video, and subscribe to stay ahead of the next move.
So when I look ahead at 2026, I think it's a really attractive setup. Monetary policy's been tight for 3 years now, and we're just beginning to get some easing, but we also have a new Fed chair, and I think that the idea is to unleash and improve monetary liquidity. That's a big tailwind. The business cycle has been muted for the last 4 years. The ISM manufacturing, which is a measure of business activity, has been below 50 for 36 months. It's the longest stretch below 50 in the history of the ISM survey. It shows you business confidence has been muted because of inflation and then Fed tightness and then policy uncertainty and tariffs, but that all clears next year. And we know that investors are very skeptical because sentiment remains negative and people talk about an AI bubble, but measurable surveys like AAII show people are negative. And that's a contrarian tailwind because when everyone's bearish and they're sitting on a lot of cash, then if the market moves away from them, they're going to chase that. So I think that that's a formula that's very supportive of stocks next year. However, the timing is a little uncertain because we're coming off 3 years of really good gains. So I think that the first part of next year, maybe the market has to digest that a bit, but it should play out really strongly for the full year. Been disappointing the last few months because prices are down a lot. And when prices are down, first of all, we know the mood turns really dark. People get second guess, especially because price is so important as a signal in crypto. And now people are really worried that this is the start of the 4-year cycle of the downturn, which might last a year. So that's at the back of people's minds. But I would say people should be wary that price isn't always signal because there's times when there's fundamental developments that are really building. And I see this in equity markets all the time, while price remains skeptical. I think we're in one of those moments because Bitcoin has become an institutional asset. So that's very different than the last 10 years. Well, really 15 years for Bitcoin. It's for the first time has a different buyer. And the US government just about to finalize the Clarity Act and some action regarding the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. That's a brand new buyer. And on Ethereum specifically, there is a huge runway coming because of stablecoins, which is a tokenization of a dollar. But it's just the start because we know that BlackRock and Robinhood and everyone else wants to tokenize everything on the blockchain. That's a big unlock of activity, which is going to happen regardless of whether prices of Ethereum and Bitcoin aren't going straight up, because these are innovations in financial products. So I'm in the camp that we have not really seen the peak associated with a 4-year cycle. In fact, in some ways, because of muted monetary liquidity and all the suppressed animal spirits, the market's been super concentrated this year. I think that the best prices are going to be seen next year for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. The way this is ultimately proven is if Bitcoin makes a new high before end of January, which I believe will happen. But we did talk about that in the most recent BitMine chairman's message from November, that we looked at things that could explain the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin. In the past, what peaked that explained why Bitcoin was following that cycle. The two things that really explain Bitcoin's price peaks that were not time related, like not just saying the clock, was the copper versus gold price ratio.
Bitcoin is poised for its next major surge as market signals, institutional adoption, and blockchain innovation converge to shape 2020 SIX's crypto landscape. Tom Lee reveals that traditional market indicators, such as the copper-to-gold ratio and the ISM Manufacturing Index, have historically aligned with Bitcoin price peaks, but current data shows these signals have yet to converge. Copper-to-gold ratios remain low due to stablecoins driving unprecedented gold purchases, pushing gold to record highs. This dynamic suggests that a major move in copper, coupled with a rebound in industrial activity, could mark Bitcoin's next peak. Meanwhile, the ISM index has stayed below 50 for nearly 40 months, the longest stretch on record, indicating a muted business cycle and signaling that Bitcoin has not yet reached its price zenith. Tom Lee reveals that crypto is entering a transformative phase as it intersects with AI and advanced computing, particularly in innovation hubs like Dubai. Events such as Binance Blockchain Week highlight how blockchain and AI are beginning to underpin real-world applications beyond price speculation. Bitcoin and Ethereum are evolving into institutional-grade assets, supported by adoption and infrastructure development. Tom Lee reveals that the cryptocurrency market is nearing a bottom, particularly for Ethereum, with a potential V-shaped recovery driven by renewed liquidity and central bank support. Ethereum could reach $7,000 to $9,000, while Bitcoin is expected to surpass its previous all-time high. Stablecoins are positioned as a catalyst for tokenizing finance, fueling innovation and adoption across the crypto ecosystem. Let's get back to the interview.
That makes sense because it's industrial activity versus monetary base. That has always peaked in coincidence with the past peaks of Bitcoin price. But copper to gold has actually been at a low right now, meaning we actually haven't seen copper gold peak. Why is that? I think part of it has to do with stablecoins buying so much gold this year. They are the single biggest buyer of gold. They've driven gold to an all-time high. And that means there's a huge move coming in copper. The second is, then that will mark the Bitcoin peak. The second is the ISM. ISM has always peaked in coincidence with the Bitcoin price peaks in the past. But as I mentioned earlier, ISM has now been below 50 for almost 40 months, the longest stretch in history. Until the business cycle and industrial cycle peak, I don't think Bitcoin's going to peak in price. I'm really looking forward to being at Binance Blockchain Week. It's happening in exactly the place you'd want it to, which is Dubai, where there's so much crypto innovation taking place. But also Dubai is where a lot of AI hyperscaling is going to take place, and even a lot of compute. And we know that crypto and AI are going to start to intersect in the agentic world. So I think it's an ideal place. I think what people are going to hear from us is really this vision of why crypto is entering a much different phase where it's becoming central to the economy. Up until now, Bitcoin and Ethereum and altcoins have all been a story of price, and it's created a lot of wealth, and it's really drawn in a community of dedicated people, but it hasn't created products that have actually worked in the real world. I think that's finally changing, and that's what makes the next 5-10 years so exciting. The first is, of course, we know we're in the midst of a downturn for crypto prices. Bitcoin and Ethereum are the ones everyone is watching because they're the two largest, and Bitcoin, of course, is the flagship. I think we are so close to the bottom here, especially for Ethereum. I mean, the bottom could be happening this week or within the next 4 days. And from there, we are going to have, I think, a V-shaped recovery because of the liquidity that's coming as the shutdown has ended, the US government shutdown, and also because the central bank, I think, is tilting dovish, especially with a potentially new Fed chair. That, I think, should propel prices very strongly into the end of January. And that's where I think Ethereum, could be 7,000 to 9,000. And I believe Bitcoin is going to recover to past its all-time high by that time. I'm always going to root for CZ. So, yeah, it's really interesting. Gold has become not only a story that has shown it maintains itself as a store of value, but it's very likely going to be tokenized on the blockchain. So gold is, joining the blockchain revolution as well.
The cryptocurrency market is positioned at a critical juncture as liquidity conditions and institutional adoption converge to shape Bitcoin's trajectory. Historically reliable indicators, including the copper-to-gold ratio and the ISM Manufacturing Index, suggest that industrial activity and business cycles have not yet reached levels typically associated with Bitcoin's price peaks, leaving room for further upside. The growing integration of blockchain with AI and advanced computing is creating tangible real-world applications that extend beyond speculative trading, establishing Bitcoin and Ethereum as increasingly institutional-grade assets. Renewed liquidity, combined with concentrated market sentiment and tokenization trends driven by stablecoins, is likely to support a V-shaped recovery, particularly for Ethereum, while positioning Bitcoin to exceed previous all-time highs. The evolving infrastructure and adoption dynamics underscore a structurally bullish environment, highlighting the potential for sustained gains and transformative impact across the broader crypto ecosystem. Do you think Bitcoin will surpass its previous all-time high in 2026? Join the conversation on Bitcoin's next move. Leave a comment, share your insights, and subscribe for the latest crypto analysis.